In May 2015, a quiet neighborhood near Fort Wayne, Indiana, was shaken by a brutal crime. An 18-year-old boy, Terry Prinzler, was found murdered, and what began as a routine investigation quickly unraveled dark, hidden family secrets that shocked the community. Terry had been a typical teenager until his untimely death set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Terry Prinzler had recently graduated from high school and was looking forward to starting college on a football scholarship, where he planned to study graphic design. Unlike most teenagers, Terry was quiet and introverted. He preferred to stay out of the spotlight, often avoiding the usual high school parties and social gatherings, choosing instead to keep to himself. Terry's parents were particularly worried when they noticed his behavior shifting even more in his final year of high school. He had always been close to his uncle, Terry Prinzler, who was 54, and had acted as a father figure to him throughout most of his life. With Terry's father, Stan, working long hours at the Dairy Queen he owned, Terry was always around to fill the gap. He took Terry to football games, helped with school projects, and even hosted sleepovers. Some people found their closeness a bit odd and unsettling. As Terry grew older, his parents, Stan and Sandra, began to feel like Terry was pulling their son away from them. By May 2015, Terry had left his parents' home and was living with Terry full-time. This change came as a surprise to many in their quiet suburban neighborhood near Fort Wayne, Indiana. Neighbors often remarked how unusual it seemed for an 18-year-old to move out immediately after finishing high school. Terry's mother, Sandra, a stay-at-home mom, felt hurt and confused by her son's decision to live with his uncle. She often expressed her frustration to friends, saying that she barely saw her son anymore. Meanwhile, Stan, a stern and traditional man, had his suspicions about a possible sexual relationship between his brother and son, but never voiced them out loud. Terry's home was just a few miles from Terry's parents, but the shift in lifestyle was noticeable. At home, Terry had structure, but living with Terry offered him much more freedom. As a contractor with a flexible schedule, Terry often spent full days with Terry, and there were rumors that their time together included drinking and possibly using drugs. Since moving in with his uncle, friends observed that Terry had become more withdrawn, often skipping social events and ignoring invitations to hang out. The family dynamic had clearly become strained in the months before his death, but many believed it was just a passing phase. At the time of his murder, Terry was concentrating on preparing for college and aiming to pursue a career in graphic design. Although Terry lived farther from his parents, he still had occasional contact with them, but their relationship was nowhere near what it had been and would never return to that state. On the afternoon of May 15, 2015, Terry Prinzler stumbled upon a horrifying scene. Around 2:30 p.m., after returning home from work, he went down to the basement to check on his nephew, Terry. Terry stated that Terry had been feeling unwell that morning and chose to stay home instead of running errands. He expected to find Terry resting, but what he discovered was horrifying. Terry's lifeless body lay sprawled on the cold concrete floor of the basement. Terry had been beaten to death, with his face and chest covered in bruises and blood. In a state of panic, Terry called 911, his voice frantic as he tried to explain the situation. He suggested that he thought Terry might have fallen or been attacked by an intruder. "There's blood everywhere," Terry reportedly said during the call. When first responders arrived, they observed that he seemed deeply shaken, repeatedly expressing his disbelief over how this could have happened. His hands trembled, and his eyes were red, as though he had been crying. Terry's body was found in an unfinished section of the basement, surrounded by old exercise equipment and storage boxes. The dimly lit room had only a single window high on the wall, which cast a faint glow over the scene. The police quickly secured the area, sealing off the basement to start their investigation. Terry had sustained severe injuries, with significant trauma to his head and chest. The coroner later confirmed that he had been brutally beaten to death with fists, indicating a violent and rage-fueled attack. The discovery of his body sent shockwaves through the quiet suburban neighborhood. Those who knew Terry described him as a nice, quiet kid, making it difficult for them to fathom why anyone would want to harm him. News of the tragedy spread rapidly, and by evening, local stations like WPTA 21 were reporting live from the neighborhood. Residents watched as news vans filled the streets, and reporters interviewed neighbors who voiced their shock and disbelief. One neighbor, who wished to remain anonymous, told the Journal-Gazette that Tyler had always seemed like a good kid, but they couldn't help but note the unusual closeness between him and his Uncle Terry. This detail would soon become crucial to the investigation as police began to delve into the events leading up to Tyler's death. When officers arrived at Terry Prinzler's home that afternoon, they encountered a disturbing scene. Officers from the Fort Wayne Police Department quickly responded to Terry's frantic 911 call, arriving at the house within minutes. The lead investigator, Detective Courtney Monroe, a 38-year-old known for her methodical approach and calm demeanor under pressure, was the first on the scene. She was accompanied by her partner, both in work and in life, Detective Adam Brooks, a 45-year-old veteran recognized for his sharp instincts and straightforward style. The basement where Tyler's body was discovered struck the detectives as unusual. The room was cold and dimly lit, with only a small window allowing in some natural light. Tyler's body lay near a set of weights and old storage boxes, creating an unsettling scene. Tyler's face and chest were badly bruised, showing clear signs of a violent struggle. Blood spatter marked the walls, and streaks of blood on the floor suggested he may have tried to crawl away from his attacker. The brutality of the crime scene was shocking, far exceeding what the detectives typically encountered in a suburban home. Detective Monroe observed the absence of any obvious murder weapons at the scene. There were no knives, guns, or blunt objects that could have caused the injuries. Instead, it seemed that Tyler had been beaten to death with someone's bare hands. This suggested that the attack was highly personal, likely fueled by intense anger or jealousy. Monroe and Brooks promptly began gathering evidence, taking photographs of the scene and collecting blood samples for DNA testing. Forensics teams arrived shortly after, employing advanced tools to search for fingerprints and other clues that could lead to the killer. One of the investigators utilized bluster forensic, a chemical designed to reveal traces of blood that might have been wiped away. In this instance, there were no signs of an attempted cleanup. The sheer brutality of the attack was evident. The coroner, who arrived shortly after, estimated that Tyler had been dead for several hours before being found, placing his time of death around 11 a.m. that morning. As Monroe and Brooks continued to examine the scene, they couldn't shake their curiosity about the nature of Tyler's relationship with his Uncle Terry. Terry was the one who discovered Tyler's body, and his reaction appeared genuine. However, in cases like this, those closest to the victim often became the primary subjects of questioning. The detectives understood that they needed to delve deeper into the family's relationships to uncover the truth behind Tyler's tragic death. The first person the police questioned in the investigation was Tyler's father, Stan Prinzler. At 45, Stan was a hard-working owner of a Dairy Queen, known for his reliability but also his stern demeanor. He had a reputation in town for fixing classic cars at his garage, where he spent much of his time. Stan's relationship with Tyler had become strained in the months leading up to the murder, and his temper was well known among locals in Fort Wayne. Detectives Courtney Monroe and Adam Brooks brought Stan in for questioning on the evening of May 15th, just hours after Tyler's body was found. Initially, Stan appeared cooperative but visibly tense. He explained that he hadn't seen Tyler in weeks. Ever since his son moved out to live with his Uncle Terry, Stan admitted to feeling frustrated, particularly as Tyler had been distancing himself from the entire family. "We barely spoke," Stan told the detectives. "He just left, and I had no idea why." Monroe and Brooks observed Stan's irritation as he spoke about Tyler's close relationship with Terry. He admitted feeling suspicious about how much time his brother and son spent together, but when they directly asked if he believed Terry had anything to do with Tyler's death, Stan hesitated. His response was hesitant. "I don't know. It just doesn't seem like him," he finally said. The interrogation shifted when the detectives pressed Stan about his whereabouts during Tyler's time of death. Stan asserted that he had been working at the garage all day, a claim later confirmed by one of his Dairy Queen employees. Despite having an alibi, Stan's frustration over Tyler's growing distance and his strained relationship with his brother kept him as a key suspect early in the investigation. Throughout the interview, Stan's temper occasionally flared. He raised his voice when discussing Terry and became defensive when asked about his feelings toward Tyler. "I love my son," no matter what he said angrily. However, his demeanor suggested there was much more beneath the surface. The detectives left the interview with mixed feelings. While Stan's alibi seemed to hold up, his escalating frustration with Tyler and the tension within the family raised lingering doubts. Monroe noted in her report that Stan's anger toward both his son and brother could still be a crucial piece of the puzzle. With no concrete evidence linking him to the murder, Stan remained a person of interest, but the police recognized they needed more to justify pursuing him as a suspect. The investigation took a significant turn when detectives uncovered new evidence that unexpectedly connected Terry Prinzler, Tyler's uncle, to the murder. As police continued to search Terry's home, where Tyler's body had been found, they discovered Tyler's cell phone hidden in the basement. Forensic experts at the Fort Wayne Police Department promptly began extracting data from the phone, hoping it would provide insight into the events leading up to his death. Among Tyler's text messages, social media conversations, and photos, detectives uncovered a series of deeply explicit messages exchanged between Tyler and Terry. What they discovered was shocking. Tyler and Terry had been engaged in a secret sexual relationship. The messages, which spanned several months, revealed a side of their connection that no one in the family would have ever suspected. Tyler had often confided in Terry about his struggles at home, and it appeared that their close relationship had evolved into something more. The texts revealed not only intimate details but also tensions between the two. In the days leading up to his death, Tyler had expressed a desire to move on with his life, pursue college, and leave the relationship behind. This caused friction with Terry, who became increasingly jealous and controlling in his messages. One of the most revealing exchanges occurred just a day before the murder, when Tyler texted Terry, expressing his desire to start fresh when he went off to college. Terry's response was angry and possessive, revealing his desire to control Tyler. Investigators noted that Terry appeared to struggle with Tyler's wish for independence, which could have triggered violent emotions in him. The revelation of their secret relationship prompted detectives to re-interview Terry. During the second interrogation, Terry initially denied everything, maintaining his earlier claim that he was merely Tyler's mentor and father figure. However, when detectives confronted him with the messages, his demeanor changed. His face grew pale, and after several long pauses, he reluctantly confessed to the relationship. He claimed that the relationship had started as a way to help Tyler cope with his emotional struggles, but had quickly evolved into something more. However, Terry's confession did not include any admissions regarding the murder. He insisted that while their relationship was inappropriate, he had no involvement in Tyler's death. But detectives weren't convinced. The new evidence indicated that Terry's feelings for Tyler had become obsessive, and Tyler's desire to break free could have provided the motive for the brutal crime. As the investigation progressed, the detectives intensified their focus on Terry Prinzler, Tyler's uncle. Terry, 54, was a successful contractor in Fort Wayne, known for his charm and outgoing personality. He had always played a significant role in Tyler's life. However, after the shocking discovery of Tyler's body, police suspected that Terry was concealing something crucial. On May 19, 2015, Detective Courtney Monroe brought Terry in for another round of questioning. The atmosphere in the interrogation room was tense as the detectives presented the evidence they had gathered, including the sexually explicit text messages and a notebook detailing Terry's obsessive feelings for Tyler. As they pressed Terry, his calm demeanor began to break down. Initially, he denied any wrongdoing, insisting that his relationship with Tyler was nothing more than that of a mentor and a loving uncle. As the detectives pressed him with the evidence, Terry's calm demeanor began to unravel. After several tense exchanges, he finally broke down, confessing that he and Tyler had been involved in a secret sexual relationship. "I never intended for it to escalate like this," he admitted, visibly shaken. Terry expressed to the police that he loved Tyler and believed Tyler felt the same way. He explained that their relationship had initially begun as a means to support Tyler through his emotional struggles, but it soon evolved into something more complex and deeply intimate. Terry revealed his growing concern over Tyler's plans to attend college, fearing it would mean losing him. He described feeling increasingly possessive and anxious about the possibility of Tyler moving on and leaving their relationship behind. "I was afraid of losing him. He was everything to me," Terry said, his voice trembling. He looked down, visibly shaken as he recounted the intensity of his feelings and the fear that Tyler might reject him in pursuit of a more independent life. As he spoke, it became clear that his emotions had spiraled, leading him to a place of desperation that could explain the violence of the act. The detectives watched carefully, aware that Terry's vulnerability might mask a deeper rage simmering beneath the surface. He mentioned that Tyler had talked about moving on with his life and starting fresh by relocating for college, which filled Terry with fear and jealousy. I just wanted him to stay with me. I thought we could make it work, he added, his voice cracking with emotion. The detectives exchanged glances, recognizing the potential for this emotional turmoil to have driven Terry to commit an unspeakable act. As Terry continued to elaborate on his feelings, it became increasingly clear that his obsessive attachment to Tyler might have transformed into something dangerously possessive. The confession was significant, highlighting that Terry's feelings for Tyler were not just affectionate but also deeply possessive. This revelation prompted the detectives to consider how Terry's emotional turmoil could have escalated into violence, especially given his fear of losing Tyler to a new life away from him. The detectives recognized that this complex dynamic between uncle and nephew might have contributed to a motive, suggesting that Terry's desire to maintain control over Tyler could have led to a confrontation that ended tragically. As the interrogation continued, they pressed for details about the day of the murder, hoping to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle. Detective Monroe leaned forward, her gaze piercing as she asked, "Did you and Tyler have any arguments about his future on that day?" Terry hesitated, his eyes darting away as he seemed to weigh his words carefully. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. "Yes, we did. Tyler was adamant about wanting to go to college and leave Fort Wayne. He said he needed a fresh start." His voice trembled slightly. I couldn't bear the thought of him leaving me." Monroe pressed further. "What exactly did you say to each other? Did you feel angry or threatened by his decision?" Terry's expression shifted, revealing a mix of guilt and anger. "I told him he didn't understand what he was giving up. I tried to make him see that I could help him, that he didn't need to leave. It was like he was ready to throw everything away for something unknown. I was scared." His admission hung in the air, and Monroe could sense the emotional weight of his words. "Did the conversation escalate?" she asked, her voice steady but probing. "It got heated," Terry admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I tried to convince him to stay, but he was resolute. I felt like I was losing him." Monroe exchanged a glance with Detective Brooks, noting the intensity of Terry's emotions. They were closing in on a possible motive, but they needed to understand the extent of Terry's feelings and whether that fear had driven him to violence on that fateful day. Terry hesitated to provide details, but his body language indicated that the discussion had turned troubling. As the interrogation concluded, the detectives grasped the complex dynamics involved. Terry Prinzler emerged as the main suspect in the case, and his admission of a secret relationship with Tyler added a disturbing twist to the already heartbreaking narrative. As investigators delved further into the case, they turned their attention to Sandra Prinzler, Tyler's mother. At 42, Sandra was a devoted stay-at-home mom who had poured her life into her family. However, her marriage to Stan had been troubled for years, and whispers of discord within the household had begun to emerge. On May 20, 2015, Detective Courtney Monroe brought Sandra in for questioning. The tension in the small interrogation room was palpable as Sandra fidgeted nervously in her seat. As the detectives began discussing Tyler's murder, they observed her unease, noting her shifting posture and averted gaze. She fidgeted with her hands, avoiding eye contact as the detectives pressed her about her relationship with Tyler. When questioned, Sandra became defensive, asserting that she had always been a protective mother and that her son was everything to her. As the conversation progressed, the detectives began to uncover a shocking revelation: Sandra had been involved in a secret affair with Terry, Tyler's uncle. Detective Monroe confronted her directly about the nature of her relationship with Terry. Sandra hesitated before finally admitting to the affair, explaining that it had begun months before Tyler's death. Terry was great, but it was so complicated, she confessed. The detectives quickly realized that Sandra's jealousy over Tyler's relationship with Terry might have added to the family's already strained dynamics, potentially playing a critical role in the tragic events that followed. Sandra admitted that she felt pushed aside by the relationship between her son and Terry. "It was like I didn't exist anymore. Terry and Tyler were always together," she said, her frustration evident. Detectives sensed that her feelings of exclusion and jealousy had deepened the family's already complex and volatile situation. Her voice was filled with frustration as she confessed, "Seeing Tyler grow closer to Terry only made me more jealous. I wanted to be the one he was with, not Tyler." This admission gave detectives a clearer understanding of the intense emotional conflict within the family, which may have contributed to the tragic events. This revelation added a deeply unsettling element to the case. The fact that both Sandra and Terry were involved in secret sexual relationships with each other, and with Tyler, created a complex web of family tensions. The detectives now had to consider how these overlapping affairs and emotional conflicts may have played a crucial role in the events leading to Tyler's murder. As the interrogation went on, Sandra's emotions shifted rapidly between anger and sorrow. She expressed deep sadness over losing her son, but her frustration with Terry was just as evident. The detectives could see that the tangled emotions and hidden affairs within the family might have created a volatile situation, one that could have easily escalated into violence. Detective Monroe left the interview with a clearer picture of the underlying tensions. The tangled web of secrets and jealousy between Sandra and Terry only deepened the complexity of the case. The possible motives behind Tyler's murder were becoming more layered and personal, but the full truth remained elusive. It was clear that the investigation into this tragic family saga was far from over. By late May 2015, the investigation into Tyler Prinzler's murder had taken several unexpected turns, but the evidence eventually led detectives back to one person: Terry Prinzler, Tyler's 54-year-old uncle. Terry, a successful contractor and well-liked figure in Fort Wayne, had always appeared to be the ideal mentor, stepping in to support Tyler when he left his parents' home. To the outside world, Terry seemed like the perfect uncle, caring and involved. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Terry's relationship with Tyler was far more complicated and darker than anyone had imagined. Beneath the surface, however, lay dark secrets no one could have imagined. Detective Courtney Monroe had already unearthed the disturbing truth about the secret sexual relationship between Terry and Tyler. As the investigation dug deeper, it became clear that Terry's obsession with Tyler had grown more dangerous over time. The detectives began piecing together Terry's motives, realizing that Tyler's desire to break free and start a new life might have been the trigger for a fatal confrontation. The once close bond between uncle and nephew had begun to unravel as Tyler shifted his focus to his future college, football, and independence. Feeling abandoned, Terry's jealousy and possessiveness intensified, interpreting Tyler's desire for freedom as a personal betrayal. On May 28th, police received the final piece of the puzzle. A forensic analysis of Tyler's phone revealed a heated argument between the two just hours before his murder, with Terry pleading for Tyler to stay and Tyler firmly standing his ground. This discovery brought everything into sharp focus for the investigators. Forensic evidence from Terry's home, specifically the basement where Tyler's body had been discovered, revealed Tyler's blood on Terry's clothing. This damning discovery confirmed the detectives' growing suspicions. Terry had brutally beaten Tyler to death in what he had disguised as a new sex style they would be trying out. It was clear that Terry's obsession and fear of losing Tyler had escalated into a violent outburst, resulting in the young man's tragic death. Investigators believed that Terry's emotional turmoil over losing control of Tyler, coupled with his sexual jealousy and possessiveness, had driven him to commit the murder. That same afternoon, around 3:30 p.m., police arrived at Terry's modest home in Fort Wayne to arrest him. As detectives approached the door, Terry appeared unnervingly calm, even smiling as he invited them inside. The unsettling demeanor masked the gravity of the situation, as the detectives prepared to confront him with the evidence that would change everything. When they informed him he was under arrest for the murder of Tyler Prinzler, Terry's face remained expressionless. He didn't resist or protest, simply asking, "How'd you figure it out?" As the police handcuffed him and led him out of the house, neighbors watched from their front yards in disbelief. Terry had been a well-liked member of the community, and seeing him taken away in a police car was something many couldn't fathom. The image of the once admired uncle now embroiled in such a horrific crime left a deep impact on the tight-knit neighborhood. The Prinzler family, already shattered by Tyler's death, was further devastated by the news of Terry's arrest. Stan and Sandra were particularly heartbroken, grappling with the reality that the man they had trusted with their son's well-being was responsible for his brutal murder. Their grief deepened, intertwining with feelings of betrayal as they struggled to comprehend how someone so close to them could commit such a horrific act. The sense of trust that had once existed was replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss and anger, tearing the family apart even further. The arrest marked a pivotal moment in the case, but the complete narrative leading to this tragic murder would unfold during the trial. In October 2016, Terry Prinzler faced the court for the murder of his nephew, Tyler. The trial captivated Fort Wayne, Indiana, drawing a crowd of reporters, family members, and curious residents eager to learn more about the shocking events that had shaken their community. As the proceedings began, tensions ran high, and the courtroom buzzed with anticipation, ready to witness the unraveling of a deeply troubled family story. The prosecution, led by 37-year-old Ashley Madison, presented a clear and unsettling narrative of the crime. She contended that Terry, driven by jealousy and a desire for control, violently killed Tyler after the teenager began to pull away from their secret relationship. Madison, recognized for her meticulous approach, meticulously detailed the evidence: the forensic analysis showing Tyler's blood on Terry's clothing, the shocking discovery in the basement, and Terry's own admission of their inappropriate relationship. Each piece of evidence was designed to highlight Terry's emotional instability and the fatal consequences of his possessiveness. On the defense was 52-year-old attorney Donald P. Hayes, a veteran lawyer with a reputation for tackling challenging cases. Hayes contended that Terry did not premeditate the murder, arguing that the fatal beating was the result of an emotional breakdown rather than a deliberate intent to kill. He sought to portray the incident as a tragic accident, emphasizing Terry's mental state at the time and suggesting that the confrontation spiraled out of control in a moment of intense emotional turmoil. Hayes aimed to portray Terry as a broken man, consumed by guilt and regret for his actions. Throughout the trial, Tyler's parents, Stan and Sandra Prinzler, remained seated in silence, their expressions a mix of sorrow and disbelief. Sandra often wiped away tears as the prosecution laid bare the details of her son's secret life, forcing her to confront painful revelations about the relationships that had contributed to their family's tragedy. The courtroom was heavy with emotion, each new piece of evidence deepening their grief and sense of betrayal. The complicated family dynamics, including Sandra's affair with Terry, shocked the community, revealing a web of secrets that many had never suspected. This painful reality cast a long shadow over the trial, as everyone grappled with the complexities of loyalty, betrayal, and grief. After 3 days of intense deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict, a decision that would bring some closure to the Prinzler family and the community still reeling from the tragedy. On October 12, 2016, the jury found Terry Prinzler guilty of first-degree murder. As the verdict was announced, Terry sat silently, his gaze fixed on the floor, betraying no emotion. Shortly thereafter, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a grim conclusion to a heartbreaking case that had shattered a family and left the community in disbelief. For many, the sentencing offered a sense of justice, but for Tyler's family, no punishment could heal the wounds of their loss. The trial had unearthed deep-seated family secrets, leaving lasting scars that would take years to mend. Friends of Tyler, now scattered across various colleges, shared their sorrow and disbelief, grappling with the tragic turn of events that had forever changed their lives. The impact of Tyler's death resonated throughout the community, serving as a stark reminder of the complexities of love, betrayal, and the tragic consequences of hidden truths. As the courtroom emptied, Fort Wayne was left to confront the aftermath of the tragedy and its far-reaching consequences. Following the trial's conclusion in October 2016, the fallout for the Prinzler family was profound. Terry Prinzler, convicted of murdering his nephew Tyler, received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. This verdict not only marked the end of a legal battle but also signaled the beginning of a long, painful journey for Tyler's parents and friends as they navigated their grief and sought to rebuild their shattered lives. The community, once a place of safety and familiarity, now bore the weight of a dark chapter, forever changed by the shocking events that had unfolded. The court's ruling underscored the gravity of the crime and the deep betrayal of trust that had shattered the Prinzler family. Once a well-respected contractor in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Terry quickly became a figure of infamy, known for the horrific actions that led to his nephew's death. He was transferred to Indiana State Prison, a maximum security facility where he would serve his life sentence. This dramatic fall from grace left the community in shock, grappling with the reality of a family torn apart by dark secrets and tragic choices. Tyler's father, Stan Prinzler, was deeply shaken by the revelations that surfaced during the trial. The knowledge that Terry had concealed such a dark secret eroded Stan's trust in his family and left him grappling with feelings of betrayal. Although Stan had once shared a close bond with his brother, their relationship quickly deteriorated in the aftermath of the trial. The pain of losing his son, combined with the betrayal of a trusted family member, created an insurmountable rift that left Stan feeling isolated and heartbroken. In the months that followed, Stan faced an uphill battle in coping with the loss of his son and the disintegration of his family. He decided to leave his job as a mechanic and relocated to Indianapolis in hopes of starting anew. Yet the emotional burden of Tyler's death, coupled with his brother's betrayal, made it challenging for him to find peace or a sense of normalcy. As he tried to navigate his grief, Stan often felt overwhelmed, struggling to envision a future without his son, and with the shattered remnants of family ties weighing heavily on his heart. Sandra Prinzler faced intense public scrutiny in the aftermath of the trial, as revelations about her affair with Terry surfaced. Although she was never charged with any crime, the shocking details of her involvement in the events leading up to Tyler's murder left her isolated and ostracized by friends and neighbors. Seeking to escape the judgment and whispers, Sandra decided to leave Fort Wayne and relocated to a small town in southern Indiana, where she hoped to find some semblance of anonymity and a chance to rebuild her life away from the painful memories. Her marriage to Stan could not withstand the fallout from the trial, leading to their separation shortly afterward. Although Sandra attempted to live a quiet life, the stigma of her involvement in the scandal haunted her, making it difficult to escape the shadows of her past. The Prinzler family, once tightly knit, was left irrevocably fractured by the traumatic events of that fateful day in May 2015, forever altering their lives and relationships. While Terry served his time in prison, Stan and Sandra grappled with their new realities, each attempting to navigate life under the weight of their family's dark legacy. The trauma lingered, leaving them both unable to fully heal, and the once unbreakable bonds that held them together were now irreparably severed. The emotional scars remained, shaping their lives in ways they could never have anticipated.